I messed up a bald man's haircut and my boss stabbed him in the head. The job ad was a lifeline in a newspaper that felt a century old. It was wedged between ads for used car parts and psychic hotlines. Barber wanted. No experience necessary. Excellent pay. It was the line below that made me pause. Clental specialise in the alopecic. I had to look the word up. It means bald. I figured it was a prank or some kind of code. But the rent was 3 weeks late, and my landlord had started using my first name in his texts, which is never a good sign. So I called. A quiet voice gave me an address. The shop was called Silas's. It looked normal enough. The striped pole outside turned with a tired groan, its colours faded by the sun. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of talcum powder and leather polish, but underneath it all, there was a faint coppery tang, like an old penny held too long in a sweaty hand. The man behind the counter, Silas, had a face like worn stone and hands that were unnervingly still. He hired me on the spot. My first hour was just watching. A man with a scalp as smooth and shiny as a river stone sat in Silas's chair. "The usual, Silas," he murmured, closing his eyes. Silas picked up a pair of shears. They looked heavy, ancient, and he began to cut. The scissors made a soft snip, snip in the empty air an inch above the man's head. Silas moved with intense concentration, his brow furrowed. He'd comb the air, lift invisible strands between his fingers, and snip them away. He used grippers that buzzed with no resistance, shaping nothing at all around the man's ears. It was the most insane thing I had ever seen. I kept looking at the mirrors, expecting to see a camera, to find the punchline. But there was only the reflection of the two men, one performing a pantomime, the other receiving it with a look of pure bliss. When he was done, Silas brushed the man's shoulders with a soft brush, sweeping away phantom clippings. The man opened his eyes, ran a hand over his gleaming scalp, and beamed. Perfect, Silas. Absolutely perfect. He paid in cash a $50 bill and left without asking for change. Then the bell above the door chimed again. A new client. Silas looked at me and nodded toward the empty chair. Your turn. My hands felt like blocks of ice. The man who sat down had a tired face and a scalp dotted with liver spots. Just a trim, he said. Take a little off the top, thin it out on the sides. I picked up the shears. They felt alien in my hand. I tried to copy Silas, to move with purpose. I brought the shears to the side of the man's head and made a tentative snip. The sound of the metal blades meeting echoed in the silent shop. The man's body went rigid. What was that? He hissed, his eyes snapping open in the mirror. What are you doing? I'm just starting, I stammered. Starting? It feels like you're hacking away with a hedge trimmer. You've left a hole. I can feel the draft. He was shouting now, his face turning a blotchy red. My God, look at what you've done. He shot up from the chair, pointing a trembling finger at his own perfectly hairless head. I just stood there, frozen, the shears heavy in my hand. Silas glided over, his expression unreadable. He placed a calming hand on the man's shoulder. Allow me, he said, his voice a low hum. I watched, mortified, as Silas took the shears and, with a few deft, airy snips, fixed my mistake. The man slowly relaxed, his breathing evening out. He sank back into the chair. Ah, he sighed. That's better. You've got the touch, Silas. Not like this butcher. This became my life. Day after day I'd try, and day after day I'd fail. Men would scream at me for cutting their invisible hair crooked. They'd accuse me of leaving patches, of cutting it too short, of not listening. Each time, Silas would step in and repair the damage with his silent, masterful mime. I was drowning. My mind felt like it was coming apart at the seams. I'd go home and stare at my own reflection, half expecting to see my hair gone too. Then, one Tuesday, a man came in. I hadn't seen before. He was different. His scalp wasn't just bald. It was a latticework of old, silvery scars. His eyes were flat, like chips of slate. He didn't say what he wanted. He just sat in Silas's chair and waited. Silas worked on him for nearly an hour. He used every tool, every technique, but the man just sat there, shaking his head slowly. "No," the man whispered. The word was a dead thing in the quiet room. "It's still there. I can feel it. Right here." He tapped a single finger on the very crown of his head, where a thick knot of scar tissue puckered the skin. Silas stared at the spot for a long moment. Then he turned and walked to a small, locked wooden cabinet in the corner. He opened it with a small brass key. He didn't take out shears or a comb. He took out a straight razor, the kind you don't shave with, the kind with a long, thin, wickedly sharp blade. He walked back to the chair. He didn't use shaving cream. He just placed 2 fingers on the man's scalp, pulling the skin taut. And with a single, smooth motion, he drew the razor across the scar tissue. It wasn't a shave. It was a cut. Deep. A perfect straight line of dark red welled up. It overflowed, tracing a path down the man's temple. The man's eyes rolled back in his head. A shudder ran through his entire body. A long, slow, ecstatic sigh escaped his lips. He smiled. A genuine, soul-deep smile. "Yes," he breathed. "That's it. You got it." He paid Silas with a $100 bill, walked out the door and collapsed on the sidewalk. I saw his legs buckle through the front window before his body disappeared from view. Silas didn't even flinch. He carefully wiped the blood from the razor with a white towel, folded it, and placed the tool back in its locked box. Then he turned to me. His eyes were ancient. He slid the small brass key across the counter. "You'll learn," was all he said. Then he took off his apron, hung it on a hook, and walked out of my life forever. The bell on the door chimed a few minutes later. A new customer. He sat in my chair. My hands were shaking, but I picked up the shears. And as I looked at his smooth, bald head in the mirror for the first time, I saw it. It wasn't hair. It was a shimmering, greasy stain on him. A parasite of memory, a ghost of old pain clinging to his skull. It was ugly. It was wrong. And I knew exactly where to cut.